Mr. Bascom was not credible because, of course, this was done apparently in relation to his arrest. Well, that's the most unfortunate statement coming from the RSS, because one would have thought that if they had embarked upon the most rudimentary of steps in any form of an investigation, which is to speak to the whistleblower himself, he would have indicated many things to them, including the fact that he had reported, first of all, to the then Commissioner of Police, Mr. Hoppy. He had reported the incident. This is long before his arrest. He had reported the incident to Mr. Hoppy about his concerns about the investigation. He'd reported his concerns about the way in which the investigation was conducted, and that was on the 3rd of March. And I do have here a copy of the printout of the WhatsApp that he sent to Mr. Hoppy. I'm going to share it with the press afterwards. After Mr. Hoppy, he then went to the Minister of Home Affairs, and he reported to the Minister of Home Affairs about his concerns about the investigation, about the fact that he thought the investigation had been compromised and the unusual and unorthodox actions and omissions that were taking place in relation to the investigation. Then on the 14th of April 2022, long before his arrest, he reported to the President, His Excellency Mr. Irfan Ali. He reported to the President that the investigation had difficulties. He reported specifically he had been sent to Mr. Caesar to look for a suspect in relation to the Ricardo Fagundes murder, and he told him about what had happened. We also have a copy of that WhatsApp that he sent to the President, where he commenced his WhatsApp message, "Good morning, Mr. President." This will also be shared with you. So all of that took place prior to the arrest of Mr. Bascom, and consequently, the fact that the RSS would elect to disregard the credibility of Mr. Bascom based on the fact that he was arrested, when there was clear evidence that long before he was arrested, he sought not only to speak to the Commissioner of Police, he sought to speak to the Minister of Home Affairs and the President himself. And I dare say no action was taken as a result of those complaints. So if the RSS, according to the Ministry of Home Affairs, has sought to not attribute any credit to the report and statements made by Mr. Bascom because he was arrested, I think that is clearly contradicted by the fact that Mr. Bascom has consistently been reporting to whoever he can in a position of authority about the nature of the compromise of the investigation. That having been said, it means evidently that the RSS report is, I think, of little credible value at the moment, and therefore it appears, and it's very unfortunate, that the regional security system that is available to the citizens of the Caribbean can no longer deliver what would be a credible review of both the murder of Mr. Fagundes and the investigation into it. And therefore, in those circumstances, we believe perhaps countries that possess the investigative capacity that can not only review, but can conduct an investigation independently of the persons who have been identified as being involved in the current stage of the investigation, we believe that that is necessary. I know that in the North America, you have the Federal Bureau of Investigation that is more than equipped, and there are other agencies, whether in Canada or the United Kingdom. So that's it as far as the RSS is concerned. Of course, after that, I wrote on behalf of Mr. Bascom to the Commissioner of Police requesting a copy of the RSS report. I received from his secretary an acknowledgement of receipt, and since then I have heard nothing. On the subsequent to that, since we received no response from the Commissioner of Police on whether or not he was going to make the RSS report available, we have since filed with the Commissioner of Insurance under the Act a request for information specifically in relation to the RSS report. That request is being sent to Mr. Charles Ramson, Senior Counsel, and I will also make a copy both of our covering letter to Mr. Ramson and the actual report made under the Access to Information Act 2011. And that is a request specifically for the release of the RSS security report. We then come to the charges that were instituted, apparently on the recommendation of the Director of Public Prosecutions against Mr. Bascom. Those charges were read earlier in the week. As you know, he's been placed on $100,000 bail in each one of them. Two of the virtual complainants, there are two virtual complainants, Mr. Caesar and Mr. Chavinath Singh. One of those offenses is alleged to have occurred at Hibleri, which means they're contending that the broadcast had to take place there at Hibleri. I think most members of the public know how possible it is to conduct any sort of investigation from Hibleri. So that is interesting. The other two apparently took place here in Hatfield Street, and I would assume it must have been the last press conference. After those charges were filed, actually, the same day the charges were filed and Mr. Bascom appeared, we filed a cross-charge against Mr. Blanham in relation to statements that he had made at the press conference held by the Commissioner of Police, at which himself, Mr. Caesar, and the Commissioner were present. You will recall in that press conference, amongst several things that Mr. Blanham said, he specifically accused Mr. Bascom of being mendacious, that he was a liar, that he was less than truthful when he said that he had taken Rondell Bacchus into the police headquarters when he was a suspect in the murder of Mr. Fagundes. I'm sure you will also remember that subsequent to that, Mr. Bacchus himself was interviewed by several media in which he said it was Mr. Bascom that took him in. And his lawyer also, I saw in media reports, confirmed that it was Mr. Bascom who took him in. So where the crime chief, which is not an insignificant office in the country, the head of criminal investigation of the Guyana Police Force, has opted to accuse one of his serving members of the force of misleading the public and specifically lying, that amongst several other misleading statements he made was the basis upon which the private criminal charges were brought against Mr. Blanham. When we turned up in court, when Mr. Bascom appeared, the magistrate put both matters down for the 21st. Since the filing of those charges, there has been no communication received either by myself or Mr. Bascom from the Director of Public Prosecutions in relation to any evidence that we may have about the charge which we had filed against Mr. Blanham. No request was made for the statements, no request was made for the basis upon which we filed the charge. And we have read in the press, because we have not seen the letter to the Chief Magistrate, that the Director of Public Prosecutions has withdrawn those charges. This, you will appreciate, is a most unusual development. I would venture to say perhaps unprecedented for this reason. The Director of Public Prosecutions has the power to withdraw charges, but her constitutional power is premised on the fact that she will act reasonably and that she will not act capriciously, and that there would be a legal basis and foundation for her actions. In this case, where she has not seen the evidence, where she has not requested the evidence, where no attempt has been made to find out from either Mr. Bascom or his legal representatives on what basis those charges were filed, and simply to withdraw them. I read that amongst the reasons attributed to her was the fact that she said that this was malicious and this was an attempt to intimidate the crime chief, Mr. Blanham. That is a most perplexing statement for several reasons. One, we are unaware of who the witnesses are going to be in the cases where Mr. Caesar and Mr. Singh are the virtual complainants. So we wouldn't even know whether or not Mr. Blanham is going to be one of the witnesses in that case. Two, the testimony of Mr. Blanham would not be necessary to establish the criminal offense under the cybercrime, because the person who was affected would have been the person who would testify, and of course the person who perhaps broadcast the alleged offending statements. So there's no way we would have anticipated that Mr. Blanham was going to be a witness, and given that the police prosecutor had indicated he was going to make the statements available on the next court hearing, we couldn't assume Mr. Banham would have been that person. So we respectfully believe that the DPP perhaps was a little over-enthusiastic and in rushing to judgment in withdrawing a charge where she was unaware of the evidence. Unlike the Girvan Singh case, in the Girvan Singh case, one, there was a complaint and there was a police file. So she could have reviewed the police file and arrived at the conclusion. That itself is subject to legal review. In this case, there was no complaint by Mr. Bascom. There was no inquiry of Mr. Bascom what his complaint was, and therefore we are unaware of any basis upon which the DPP could properly have acted based on our powers. That decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions is going to be challenged, and I believe it's going to be subject to a long challenge by either side, all the way up to the apex court, I'm sure, because we don't believe that the persons who are responsible for making decisions on whether criminal charges continue or are discontinued can do so merely without any basis whatsoever, and perhaps merely on a whim and a fancy. So I think we all will benefit from the guidance of the court in relation to that. And so we sit here today. I was told that Mr. Bascom now faces further cybercrime charges on the East Coast, and that matter has now been put down for the 14th of November, 2022 at the Vigilance Police Station. We have not had the benefit of what those charges are likely to be or who the virtual complainant is. I just received that information by way of a telephone call today from a police officer. I thank you, and I will ask Mr. Bascom to speak in detail about the persons to whom he complained in relation to the investigation prior to his arrest by Kanu.
Yes, good morning, everybody. When I received a phone call from Mark Richmond on the 18th of May, 2021, not the 18th of May, 2022, since last year, I received a phone call from Mark Richmond when he called me and made these threats and tell me don't go looking for you and so on. I was on my way to Lenore Court. So after he called me and I ended up calling Mr. Caesar and tell him went on, and he advised me to go make a report. I went to the Breakdown police station at the time and make the report. When I make the report, I flash it and I left and went over the river to Lenore Court because I had court at Lenore. When I go to get date for the court to come back and exit, the case was put off. And I went in the compound at Lenore and saw Mr. Watts at the canteen in Lenore, and I talked to him, explained to him, and he ended up giving me his cell phone number, and I sent through the information as the screenshot, the call for Mark Richmond, the report I made and so on, and some other stuff that I concerning the case I sent to Mr. Watts, but he didn't know anything about it. I then, on the 3rd of March, when I was transferred while I was in Essequibo, I sent certain information to the then Commissioner of Police, Mr. P. I sent certain information to him. I texted him, I also sent a voice note to him, and a document containing a 9-page statement, a document with a 9-page statement explaining everything that happened concerning the investigation. He just had to click on the document and he would see the statement. So I sent it to Mr. P. I didn't get no response from him. On the 14th of April, I sent the same document along with text explain everything to my First Minister, including Mark Richmond picture, the screenshot of Mr. Caesar tell me for flashy phone with the information with Mark Richmond address and so on. I sent it to the former First Minister, Robinson Ben, also the President. I sent everything, explained to them that I have my wife and kids, and being in Essequibo is not, it's kind of hard for me because my wife was working at the COVID hospital and she used to work strictly night. So it was just a little 13-year-old child at home where the other kids them. And with me, nobody in the home with she when the night come. That was the reason, that was part of the reason for the child running away. The whole media supposed to know the child running away. So it was very challenging. And I didn't get no response from the President. I didn't get no response from the First Minister. On the 16th of July, I think the same day the police had the cook-up show, I went to see the Home Affairs Minister. I talked to him, explained everything to him in his office. He then asked me to send back the information to him I send it back and he reply saying, okay, I get text with it. We reply and say, okay. And he never do anything about it. So this thing is not me just coming and speak out because I went in a situation with Kanu. I just want to state something concerning the Kanu part. As I said before, I went to see a friend. Kanu know that I had nothing to do with it. Kanu was going to send me away. Kanu never, when you arrest somebody, right, it's normally profile this person, as in falling out to C6 farm and this kind of thing, asking you how big is your ears, how big is your nose, and how much kids they get, where you live, what school you went to, this kind of thing. Because I work in narcotics branch, I know this thing. Kanu didn't do none of that. It's supposed to caution me about offense. Kanu never caution me about any offense. Kanu never take my fingerprints. All Kanu do was take my picture and put me in the lockup. And I had people right there when the Kanu ranks said that Mr. Blannon himself put me in the lockup. The police at Diamond Station while I was in the cell, when the rank come there to visit me, and I asked him, he said, when you bring me out here, John said, boss, I don't tell you, it's now we. It's you people have to keep it till the investigation done. When I get loose, the Thursday the 11th, and I go to Kanu, all Kanu did was give me back my stuff and send me away. So they put me for report back. If they was investigating me or anything concerning me with drugs, they would tell me I got a report back today or so on. Kanu never tell me to report back. He just give me my stuff and send me away. When I coming out, my wife and my sister was standing at the gate, and I asked the Kanu rank to say, man, I make me famous in a bad way, right? I said, if I could just, if you are going to do something now, apologizing about me pitch that was posted, the rank could come down and tell me, this come because of you people, it's you people themselves are putting like up, it's themselves are putting a picture with it. And I received, after I told me, I received a call from someone who turned and tell me that be careful, you're planning to use this thing for lash me up. So this is why that was my reason for coming out and speak out. I coming out and speak out wasn't about nobody telling me nothing or can't wait, because as I said before, I come out and speak out because I is not a person that come in the police force today or last year. It's 12 years there on the police force, right? And most of the time I spend at CID headquarters. And I know how things happen, how people is think. Now, I don't know, haven't I been come out and speak out? Somebody would have come and kill me. And the reason for the person kill me, I've done send all this information through to the president, to the Home Affairs Minister, and to the Commissioner. And with what's going on now, I know if it done me back to the people then. With what's going on now. So these people probably know why I talk and so on, and don't know the thing. This man knows certain thing. So with me in the situation, with the drug situation, they use that for come and get to me. So any person call me, I sit down and analyze. I go in the chair. If you see the video, I went in the chair because I go and sit down in the chair, and I tell my wife to bring the phone. And when I collect the phone, I just go up on live, and this is when I start talking. This is why she was crying, because she know the type of thing that's going on. And everybody talking about this person was in distress, and I got this person in distress. Nobody studied what with me and my family for the last few months. From the time I was sent for Mark Richmond, my life been going through hell. From the time they take me firearm, they do me have anything. And I've been still holding it up. I never come out and tell nobody anything. I just stay with him and so everything. And what I do after it gets into me, I didn't breach no protocol. I went and I start from within. I went to the Commissioner of Police, who was the boss in charge of me. I didn't get no response for me. Then I go to the Home Affairs Minister, who was the person in charge of the whole time service. I didn't get no response for me. Then I went to the President, who hold the highest office. I didn't get no response for me. Then I ordered these people planning to kill me. So this is why I come out and I speak out. Me speaking out wasn't about no businessman or nobody. I speak out was because my life was at threat, and I come and speak out because of that. So this is I just want to clear the part. What I did, approach Mr. Watts first, then the Commissioner of Police then, and the President. I get evidence to show that.
I just wanted, forgive me for not referring to this before. In the bail application before the Chief Magistrate, the police legal representative, Mr. Mandel Moore, asked that Mr. Bascom not be allowed and admitted to bail. He asked that he be remanded to custody. The magistrate asked him, on what basis are you asking for his liberty to be taken away? And the police prosecutor said, and I quote, Mr. Bascom has a passport and he has a visa. That's all he said. And the magistrate asked him again, what is the basis? He then said, Mr. Bascom, actually, before she said that, she asked him a visa for where? And he said he was unable to say where Mr. Bascom had a visa for. She then asked him, that is the basis upon which you're asking that this man be remanded to custody. She asked him if he was a serving member of the Guyana Police Force, and he confirmed that he was. He then said that the third reason that he wants Mr. Bascom to be sent to prison on remand is because they received information that Mr. Bascom was going around the place asking people for money so he could leave the country. I just want to say that the Constitution of Guyana guarantees every citizen the right to leave Guyana and to come into Guyana. It's not a question of discretion by the Commissioner of Police or the President. It's a guaranteed fundamental right. And so having a passport and having a visa is not any indication that you are going to become a flight risk. And certainly I would have hoped that the police would have done a little bit more investigation in saying they didn't know where the visa was for. And even if you have a visa, how is that any evidence of anything looking like a criminal intent? But that is where we are today. I thank you. Are there any questions from the press?
Just like you have a few questions, but start with Mr. Bascom.
Sorry, do you need a mic for him or to capture this?
Mr. Bascom, when you met with the former First Minister, he just listened to you. Did he say anything back to you in response to the evidence and the allegations you told him?
No, when I speak to him, he asked me, when I explain, he would ask me 1 or 2 things in between. And after I finish, then he had that. Like, I think he asked if Mr. Caesar call Mr. The man why does my man call name, because he call the name and get in charge of mentioning people's name. Right? So the man why does call the name, I just call the man name. Actually, I want the world to know this. I just call the man name saying that this man, right, this next man will charge me, right? Say that you're gonna go to breakdown and this man will provide a patrol for you. He call the person name. So he can provide a patrol for you. He then, for y'all, which was me, Mr. Bacon, for y'all. He then go on the phone and call, he said, you know, he called the person name, because if I can, I'll try to call your name. Right? He called the person name, and he said, you're going to provide a patrol for Bascom, Mr. Bacon. When he come out before, he said, y'all going to go to breakdown with the man, so the person will provide a patrol for y'all. Now, this is why y'all want to be charged for. Right? And now, they deeply recommend he charge for me for saying that. And a man sit down and call me a blatant liar and come and lie to the public saying that he approved for the station diarrhea and I didn't carry Bacchus and all this kind of thing. When he come and ask me by the step if Bacchus give me any more information, that means he know that he have to know that I bring him Bacchus. He come and put the bag in the car and he come and ask me if Bacchus give me any more information, you know, about this thing he be talking to me. And I tell you, he come in and up and talking to me.
So you got any assurance from the First Minister that this matter will be investigated?
I didn't get no insurance about it. He just asked me, he said, all right, something, and I left when I go outside. And while I go outside, he ended up texting me and telling me, he told me, "I'll send me things to you." And I go out and I start sending it. And then he replied saying, "Oh, okay," and that was it. I never heard back from him.
My next question, you identify your counsel when you may respond or not. Since you came forward with these allegations, have you been approached with any form of financial settlement to keep quiet?
Yes, I was approached twice. One night I went home and a guy called me, actually a family friend of mine. He called me and he told me that somebody in the street in the underworld meet you and tell you that the man want to meet with me before into the mastermind, or to say alleged mastermind, for another last thing. The alleged mastermind, right? Want to meet me and get to sit on one-on-one with me, and I mustn't bring nobody around. So I told him, tell you, me, you want to meet nobody, right? He told him, the man want you just go and make an apology, and the guy said that this executable businessman put your foot with this thing, right? Make an apology, said this executable businessman put your foot with this thing, and that he can give me a force that will turn your life around. So I told him, tell him, man, to tell you go, and I know that when he be there, can't say it. Go and think yourself, play with yourself, right? Right. Good. So I tell you that. So
as a trained police
officer. Yeah, and besides that, somebody else from executive call me and tell me, "Bye, I didn't get for sale before you left, but I was to talk to you about this thing." No business person. Right? The person tell me was to talk to you, said, "Man, come and why you go make up apology." So I said, "By somebody don't approach me about this thing." Right? And I say, I say, "No, the one, do the one, I go and tell the world that this other business man put on." So he said, "No, you don't got to do that. Just go and sell it to be vexed. That's why I go and sell it to be vexed. And wait, name and they sell it to they got something nice for you."
Did they say what something nice is? Or
Well, you mean money?
You get
The money you mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question for the legal status. In December of 2020, a man was killed outside the bar. Peter Gonzalez.
Yes.
Right. Casey had a gun. Was charged for that murder.
Yeah.
Weeks after, the DPP withdrew the charge from Casey.
Yes.
If my information is correct, your bosses at CID had instructed that Casey had to be charged with this murder. But if I'm correct, it was you who did the investigation and found the shooter and found the writer and
Yes.
found the site. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. Yes. Well, this story was Casey was charged and he don't get charged when before the court. They actually get somebody for pointing out on the parade saying that he was the one that shoot this man. But I end up receiving a call and I get the direct information about the guy who went to Sapphire Forgetty. He was through and don't get away. We don't get him, but 3 days after, I arrested him and Bascom, drive a fight. I last she don't he take his phone, push it in, he got away with his phone and the information concerning the murder, and I push me and he got to take out the phone, pull out the SIM, then Mr. Caesar then pull up and we take him and put it on TV. Because the phone will collect the pull out the information, and by the time they start playing in front, he confessed within like 50 minutes. And he carry back, show you where they start following the man from the Street Kitty. He go back when he see, point out, show you, he shoot the man, and he even carry we take back the man motorcycle in Tamari. We sell it to somebody in Tamari for 400,000. If he get charged in jail right now, 2 weeks after, the DPP got charge against Casey Edigo.
So you saw that, right?
Huh?
You saw that?
Yeah. So you know how much more people like that are in jail.
What is a red rum?
What is?
A red rum. When an officer instructs you to get a red rum, what is that?
I can answer that to avoid him having to answer that. Red rum spelled backwards is murder. So when the police speak to each other and they say, "I brought in a man, this is a red rum," it means they brought him in for murder. Because if you spell red rum backwards, it spells murder.
This is Sharon Douglas from Stock Entrepreneurs. I have a few questions actually. First of all, I'm going to ask you about a foreign team being here, not the RSS and not the team. I'm not sure if they're still here, but is there any information you can provide about that?
I'm sorry, I can't assist you in that. I have not seen a foreign team. I haven't met with a foreign team. I have not spoken to a foreign team.
Did that foreign team speak to Ms. Bascom?
He can speak for himself, but
No, nobody can speak to me.
Okay, we're going to shift attention onto the statement that was submitted by Mr. Bascom to the OPR. I think that was like 2 weeks ago.
yes.
And that statement, I believe, was dated February the 7th or the 8th. In that statement, Mr. Bascom apparently did not make any allegations about a police cover-up in the Goodness murder or anyone's accepted any bribe for that matter. Could you say why that statement was backdated to February and does not reflect the date it was submitted?
Well, two things. There were two statements. One statement was the 7th, and one statement was the 8th of February.
I'm referring to the second statement.
Yeah, I'm going to address them in the order in which you asked them. Neither statement was backdated. The statement that provided great detail about the investigation and the manner in which it was being investigated was made on the date of the statement. And the reason why, the reason why it was made then, and you will see it as head at CID headquarters, was because he suspected that if anything happened to him, he wanted proof that at that time he had actually given that statement. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, this was lucky.
Yeah, that is why. So it wasn't backdated. That statement was there since.
But the same statement is what I would have sent to Mr. P, the former First Minister, the President, any documents. If it was being clicked on it, they would have seen the same statement. And they sent to Mr. P since the 3rd of March. So it was just after it right in February, I sent it to him. I had it on a document. So we click, you will see everything there right there. And we said about the money, I mentioned everything because the statement was actually a statement I left in case I get killed for people to turn it out. And I give it to a couple of people to keep it. Same thing happened with everything. And I even make a video with a journalist for him to keep, and if anything happened to me, was to release the video. Where I sit down talking about everything since which would be like around the 12 or something to February.
Okay, so if that statement is indeed made on the 7th, February 7th or 8th, why do you speak of events? I think it was February 11th, where you said a police officer, I think was a female, contacted you.
No, well, you see what oh, no, catch really good tonight. I catch really good tonight.
You're talking about something that statement you made way before you even left office.
I understand what you're saying. Now, the reason, I don't get this very accent, right? When I type out the statement, I make it in a way and put the date that Mr. Beard would have called me. So there's a date to put. The date that Mr. Beard called me, and there's a date to put for everything. Because I write everything going on while on the date.
But you speak about something that happened.
That happened after, I know.
So
With the police were calling me. With the police were calling me. Because the statement didn't write the same day. No, the statement didn't write the same day. But I put the date because it was the date that the date Mr. Beard called me. After the 8th. Yeah, after the 8th. But I just put the date on the 8th.
When after the 8th did you write it? How long after the 8th did you write it?
Not long after.
Approximately.
Yeah. But like, a week after or something.
And this is arising out of an inquiry from Mr. Beard?
Yeah, because the same weekend, I just want to get it straight to you. The same weekend is when I get transferred and everything, and the next week is when I sit down and write it. So I went to put it back with the date Mr. Beard carbon date the date up, put in.
We have a question coming from the go ahead. I'm not hearing it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if you're referring to me, Mr. Hughes.
Sorry, Mr. Benchop, can you start again? We weren't hearing you just now, so can you just start the question again, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. Good morning, gentlemen. I just want to ask a question pertaining to the manner in which the police seem to be going after Mr. Bascom, making Mr. Bascom out to be the main subject of this entire probe into the murder of Mr. Fagundes. Mr. Bascom, do you find it strange that even your colleagues are coming after you for no reason? And even the DPP has done an injustice, in my opinion, by withdrawing the charge, the private criminal charges against Mr. Blanham. How do you feel that they're not actually arresting the suspects to investigate them into this murder? And how do you feel about the RSS officer coming to Guyana and not having a single word with you about this matter?
Well, I feel really RSS. I just feel everybody just trying to cover up this whole thing. To be honest, I wouldn't like. I feel as everybody just trying to cover this whole thing because of the person who is involved with it. This is why I just feel. Because of the person who is the main suspect or the mastermind into this thing.
Any more questions, Mr. Benchop?
Yeah, sorry about that, Mr. Hughes. Yeah, and concerning
I'm not sure if our technical people have lost you. I'm not actually hearing you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Concerning the special prosecutor, has it been cleared up that Mr. Mandel Moore, who is also the legal advisor to the police, stepped into the courtroom yesterday saying that he is the special prosecutor? Has all the legal remedies been rectified to pave him as the special prosecutor?
I believe you're probably referring to whether he was provided with a fiat to prosecute. There was no indication when the charges were read to Mr. Bascom that he did have a fiat to prosecute. The court made no inquiry of him whether he had a fiat to prosecute. And specifically in relation to your question, I am unaware up to today's date of whether he had a fiat to prosecute.
And finally, have you heard back from Mr. Ali pertaining to witness protection for your client? And if you haven't, how strange is that?
Well, I certainly haven't heard from the president, President Ali. You're asking me to comment on the absence of a response from the president. I certainly don't flatter myself by thinking the president has any time to even bother to respond to me as a citizen, but I would have hoped that he had a little bit more concern for the safety of one of the police serving members of the Guyana Police Force. And therefore, in that regard, particularly where that member of the Guyana Police Force was asking for witness protection, there was clear and credible evidence that his life was in danger, that some level of attentiveness would have been manifest from that office in relation to ensuring that a citizen of the country, irrespective of whatever his opinion may be of him, would be protected and kept alive. Any other questions?
So are you gonna wait? Hold on, we have a text that you're gonna wait for a response. What are you gonna do
From the president? No. We're not waiting on the president. The president doesn't determine what we do next at all. We certainly do have a plan. Whether we're willing to share the plan is another issue, because we shared the plan with you, and then we might as well escort Mr. Bascom to Sandy's. So I don't wish to be responsible for escorting him to Sandy's. So we do have a plan, and I'm sure as time goes by, you will see elements of that plan. I shared with you today that a request has been made to the Commission of Information for the RSS report. I can predict that he will refuse to give it. And then we will see what happens after that.
Do you think the president will respond?
No, I certainly don't think the president will respond, no. If there are no other questions, I want to thank everybody for having taken time out on a busy Friday morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Benchop, coming in from overseas. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant weekend.